Hello Vault Heads, this is the self-proclaimed, sarcastically named Captain KeyForge, also known as PJ Broughton of the Steel City Snufflegators. And here we are again with the latest Captain's Commpod. Thank you for joining me again, as ever I do appreciate it. And this week we're going back to the Is Dark Tidings Any Good At series. Okay, and for this episode we are going to answer the question, is Dark Tidings any good at Æmber Pips? So obviously the little bonus amber that appear on the cards and that help you generate amber without just having to reap. Okay, so there are 124 cards in KeyForge Dark Tidings that have an Æmber Pip attached to their card. Okay, also as well on top of that there is one card that adds an amber enhancement within the set, but it's not technically a pip, it adds it elsewhere. Okay, so of those cards, 74 new cards just for Dark Tidings have the Æmber Pip on them, one or more, and then the other 50 are reprints from other sets that we will have seen before. Okay, so there are 429 cards in Dark Tidings. Again, that does include the Tide card. Possibly ought to take it out, but it does. 124 out of 429 is 28.9%. So somewhere between a quarter and a third of your cards are going to have Æmber Pips on them, or you'd expect it to. So now we'll go to the house breakdown. Okay, so the lowest amount of amber you're going to find on the houses in Dark Tidings are Sanctum and Saurian. Okay, both of these houses have got 15 cards that have got one or more Æmber Pip on them. Okay, I mean that's not a small number. It could be worse. Not really that bad, but yeah, it's Sanctum and Saurian who are coming in the bottom. I mean, again, Saurian you'd expect to try to exalt and be getting effects off the exalt. Sanctum you might be capturing, or you might expect them to stay around for longer because they're bigger, stronger, and got armor. So kind of makes sense. But those two coming in last. The next one is Logos. Logos have 16 cards in this set with Æmber Pips, so they're second to last. I think the reason why Logos are sort of down here as well is because they've got a bit of draw in this set. They've got a bit of random archive, a bit of target archive, but more random. But obviously they haven't got the strength in creatures, so that's why they're there. Next is 17 cards, and that is in House Shadow. So House Shadows have got 17 cards with Æmber Pips on them, but they have got other cards that have got no Æmber Pip, like say Walk the Plank, steal one, or do 4 damage if your opponent's got none to one of their creatures. I mean, that might as well be an Æmber Pip most of the time. So they have steal. Steal is going to help make them amber. Okay, the next is our newest house, House Unfathomable. House Unfathomable have 19 cards with Æmber Pips on them. Okay, so obviously 4 below and 2 above. Not quite in the middle, but around there. But that's not a bad place to try and put the new house, keep them relevant, don't make them bad at anything. So yeah, they are at 19. Okay, and then we have 2 houses. Top of the shop, you can probably guess that they are Untamed and Star Alliance. So they both are level with each other on amber cards with Æmber Pips. They both have 21 cards in this set with at least one or more Æmber Pip on it. I mean, again, Untamed, you'd expect that. Untamed are very bursty. That's their thing. It always has been their thing. They've got the Chelonia, which is like the hunting witch. If the tide is high, gain amber when you play it. So that's their thing. The Star Alliance being level with them, I don't know if that's a surprise. It's certainly interesting. I've never necessarily thought of them as the Amber House, but yes, them and Untamed, top of the shop. So now we are going to look at cards with Æmber Pips on them by set. So we'll look at how many cards from each set had one or more Æmber Pip on them. Okay, we'll go through all the sets. As ever, we will go from lowest to highest. So what do you think's lowest? Have a go, now's your chance. So the lowest set, Age of Ascension. Age of Ascension had 118 cards with one or more Æmber Pip on them. Okay, I mean, that's not massively behind this, so maybe you're going to see a bit of parity between the sets. But yeah, out of all the cards in Age of Ascension, 118 cards had an Æmber Pip on them. So that's bottom. Have a go at what do you think's fourth? Which set do you think is fourth? I will tell you. It is Dark Tidings. As we've said, Dark Tidings has 124 cards with at least one or more Æmber Pips on them. And again, one slight caveat, there is one card within the game that will add an Æmber Pip somewhere else within the deck. So you potential argument for 125. But anyway, I'm calling it 124. That's what I'm calling it. So what do you think's next? What do you think comes in third in this list? Okay, well, it is Call of the Archons. Okay, so the original set, the daddy of them all, Call of the Archons had 126 cards with one or more Æmber Pips on them. I mean, that's two more than Dark Tidings, or one more if you consider the enhancement. But equally, I mean, it is only 8 more than Age of Ascension, so there's not a massive amount of difference here across these three so far. So what do you think is next? What do you think came in second? Well, I'll tell you, there's Mass Mutation. Mass Mutation had 134 cards, 8 more than Call of the Archons, 134 cards with at least one or more Æmber Pips on them, and on top of those 134, it had 5 cards which would add Amber enhancement somewhere in your deck. So again, there's an argument to be made for that number being 139, but 135 cards with Æmber Pips, 5 cards that will add an Æmber Pip somewhere else. So obviously, what's top? Worlds Collide. Worlds Collide had 139 cards with Æmber Pips found on them as a set. If you include the enhancement cards from Mass Mutation would have tied it, but I didn't. I just mentioned them. So Worlds Collide top 139, Dark Tidings 124, Age of Ascension bottom with 118. I mean, there's not massive amount of difference there. Mass Mutation and Worlds Collide just standing out a bit, but again, those two sets had Infernus kicking round to counteract it. So as ever, now we're going to talk about Rarity. We'll go through the rarity of all these cards. Okay, so there are 8 cards with fixed rarity that have got Amber on them. Okay, then there are 25 common cards with an Æmber Pip on them, or more than one. There are 45 uncommon cards with an Æmber Pip on them, and then there are 46 rares with an Æmber Pip on them. I mean, possibly would have liked to have seen that common being a little bit higher, but at least there's lots of uncommons. Okay, so Dark Tidings does have quite a few Amber cards that interact with the tide. Okay, I mean, have a shout, I guess, at how many you think it is, or what sort of percentage. But again, we were talking 124 cards in total, and out of those 124 cards, 19 cards interact with the tide in some way. There's a lot of different stuff there. There's a lot of variety. There's things that sort of wipe the board by taking creatures and putting them back into decks. There are cards that raise the tide and archive themselves. There are cards that reduce the cost of key on low tide and increase it on high tide. There's quite a bit of variety in these cards. There's even a card in Sanctum, 3 Æmber Pips, but you can't play it unless the tide is high. So, not quite, but almost 20% of these cards interact with the tide, which is kind of nice to see, bearing in mind it's the feature of the set. Okay, another thing that Dark Tidings seems to be good at in relation to the previous sets that we've seen, it is good at cards with multiple Æmber Pips on them. So cards like Strange Ordination, which has got 3 instead of 1. So Dark Tidings as a set has 5 cards in it that have got either 2 or more Æmber Pips found on them. I mean, now that is a small number out of 124, to be fair. That's not a big percentage out of 124. But it is a reasonably large number when compared to the other sets, because only Kota had more than 2 cards that had 2 Æmber Pips or more. So Kota had 6, Dark Tidings has 5, everything else has got 2 or less. Nothing, with the exception of Dark Tidings or Kota, have got 3 cards in the set with more than 1 Æmber Pip. The cards that I'm talking about are, first of all, Strange Ordination, which is an action for Sanctum, 3 Æmber Pips, with the condition you can only play it if the tide is high. So if you can't raise the tide, and there is one occasion where you can't raise the tide, to be fair, then you can't play it, you'd have to discard it. Yeah, 3 Æmber Pips if you can get the tide high first, or if you're prepared to take the chains. The next one is a Shadows card. Yet again, it's an action. It has 2 Æmber Pips. It is Early Birds Alpha. So the downside to this one is it's an alpha card, and it is alpha, play ready each Shadows card. Not entirely sure it's the best card in the game, to be fair, but 2 Æmber Pips is nice. And again, alpha, it's not the end of the world that it's alpha unless you've drawn it, but how much draw the Shadows have. So the next one is an Untamed Creature, power 5, no armor, Deep Water Growing. Play Reap. If the tide is low, your opponent gains 1 amber. So obviously the downside to this one is your opponent's getting something out of it if the tide is not high when you use it. So you ideally want the tide to be high when you're using that one. So yeah, that is the 3 out of 5. The fourth one, I mean, it's a reprint. So it's Fertility Chant. You've probably seen it if you've been playing since Kota. It's from that set. 4 Æmber Pips. A lot of people don't like it anymore and feel it's a bit of a liability with Infernus kicking around. And it is just an action. You gain 4 amber because it's got 4 Æmber Pips, but your opponent also gains 2 when you play it. So obviously if Infernus purges it, you lose 4 and they've gained 2 off the back of you playing it. Not ideal, which is why some people have a downer on it, but certainly good for bursting. And again, if you've got a key cheat like Key Charge, something like that, or maybe KeyFrog that you can kill if you're playing Dark Tidings. And that brings me on to the last one, which is yet again, it's another reprint from Kota. It is Untamed Creature, power 5, no armor, Fuzzy Growing. But when you play that, your opponent gains 1. So, I mean, the Deep Water Growing, if the tide is high, they don't get it. If the tide is low, they do get it. So, I kind of like the tidal business going off yet again. But, yeah, those are the 5. So, do I think it's any good at Amber? I'm going to say yes. It was not the lowest. It was 1 card off being dead centre in the middle. There were lots of uncommon cards, and there was a decent amount of commons. You know, of the 124, you were looking at sort of 20%ish were common. About 40%ish were uncommon, so you are going to see a fair bit of them. I don't think the average amber that you're going to find on your Dark Tidings decks is going to be particularly stingy or particularly worrying. I think it's going to be able to compete and cope with decks from the other sets pretty easily and without having too much trouble. So yes, as good as anything else. I'm not particularly concerned after sort of going into all this that I'm going to be finding Dark Tidings is always behind in amber count when compared with decks from other sets. So what do you think, as ever? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Why do you agree? Why do you disagree? Love to hear it. You can get in touch on email, Twitter, Facebook, comment section if you're watching on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, feel free to like, feel free to subscribe to the channel. If you're listening on the podcast, feel free to follow the podcast. Pretty much every week they are. Also as well, you can support me via Patreon if you want to see me open more decks or get some custom made tokens that I can be giving away to you all. Also as well, you'll find a link to my decks for sale on Decks KeyForge, so feel free to check that out. But thank you very much for joining me. I very much appreciate it. Look forward to hopefully having you with me again, and as ever, may the Forge be with you.